Hey everybody, happy Friday again. It is the TED Show, and it is Friday, February 9th, my 27th wedding anniversary. You guys have already heard this twice before. I'm with my friends Cam Ford and Alisa Taylor from Timber Creek Distillery, and I met Cam at the NFL, the Pro Bowl event at the M Lounge. And you know how people come in and they have their stuff, their wares out there, and Cam was so engaging, and I thought, all right, I'll give it a try. I fell in love with all of their products, and I think it's amazing. It's a Florida-based distillery, and they've got a great story behind everything. And let us know that you can hear us and see us, because I see you guys coming on. That's really important, because we're going to do a little bit of a tasting today. I'm going to show you some of the things that are my favorites, and then they're going to give you a little bit of a history about the distillery and how they came into it and what you can expect from the flavors. So welcome, guys.
Hey.
See? It's not hard. It's just an iPhone 6S Plus. We're just chit-chatting with the people. So the event was so good. I feel like your personality came out a lot, Cam. And who was the gentleman that was with you that was fun?
Oh, it was my partner, Aaron Barnes.
Yeah, so he knew his stuff, which was awesome. And so I thought, God, if their gin that's actually the first thing I tasted was a gin. And I'm not a big gin drinker. I'm not a juniper fan, so to speak. And it wasn't so heavy on the juniper that, you know how that kind of hits you in the face. Most gins are very juniper based, and so you've got that heavy floral. And this just has this smooth flavor. So I thought, all right, well, I'll try something else. I mean, I was Ubering anyway, so what did it matter? And then I just tried everything and fell in love with it. So invited Cam down, and he brought Alisa, and we're going to do a nice dinner at the Citrus Club, Spirits Dinner, which we'll talk about later. And we get to taste some of the stuff today. So welcome. Thank you. I've talked enough. All right, so Cam, this is your baby, right? So tell us a little bit about Timber Creek. I know the name is interesting. I know you allegedly did moonshine. We always use allegedly here to start everything off. Give him a little bit of history. And we're making him stand because it is kind of close quarters right now. The most important thing are these little cups right here and the little booze that you can't see. And we're going to talk about that in a bit. But thank you for driving all the way down here. Tell them about it.
While I'm talking, you guys may want to pour yourself a little.
Oh my God! See, this is why my liver's been.
Little local.
Yes. Oh, please pour whatever. I love it.
So we founded the distillery up in the Florida Panhandle, North Florida, that most people don't know is still part of Florida.
It's not Lower Alabama.
Yeah, we call it Lower Alabama up there, but the beaches are beautiful.
They are.
My wife and I moved to Destin area about 5 years ago, and when we moved, one of the things I wanted to do was to start a business that was local, that was not 100% tourist driven. So I'm out there working 100 hours at the beach, doing working instead of playing. I'd rather be out there playing.
Heck yeah.
So one of the ideas that we looked at, and I did a lot of research on it and thought the market timing was great. Of course, I love whiskey. So we started thinking about doing a distillery. And it just so happens my next door neighbor is a home brewer, and I got him into whiskey. He also likes to drink whiskey, and we started talking about this quite a bit. And we had a common love for whiskey and brewing and distilling process. And it turns out his family has a beautiful property up north of I-10, straight north of Destin, just east of a town called Crestview.
It's still Florida.
It's still Florida. It's just south of Alabama. But it doesn't look like Florida. It doesn't remind you of what people think of for Florida. We're actually on a 1,400-acre property. They've got a huge log hunting lodge that looks like it belongs in Montana or Wyoming or Utah somewhere. Beautiful property. There's hills, there's valleys, there's lakes, there's creeks, there's fish in the lake, there's turkey all over it. We've got some pigs, we've got some ducks and chickens and geese. It's a beautiful place. And so we talked to his parents, and they're going to let us use that the barn out back as our distillery. So it's a beautiful place to go to work. And we applied for a license, and we got licensed, and we started initially making whiskey and rum.
How do you jump from loving it? Because I love wine. I love pretty much most alcohol. But I'm not sure that I have the wherewithal to make the leap into making it a business or learning how it's done. Or I don't mind learning how it's done, because any of us that do tastings, most of the time we go to learning how it's done, and then because we're looking at the very end where we get to taste everything. So you took it a different way. You really had a passion for making it. You wanted to know the process, and you wanted to be an actual distiller. No, was that what do you call it?
Yeah, I mean, my background is engineering. I spent 16 years out in Silicon Valley doing tech startups and starting businesses within large companies, and I love starting businesses, and I love the challenge of a new business, a new opportunity where I can marry, my engineering background with things like distilling, right? I mean, I love drinking, I like engineering. So
I love somebody who can admit they love drinking.
Absolutely.
Beth Griffin just said, I love drinking too, Ted. We love you. Happy Friday.
Yeah. So, what you find out is distilling is basically a manufacturing process, and I worked in companies that were manufacturing switches and networking gear and storage equipment and things like that. So I understood manufacturing. I also understood the process of getting a business started, and I also understood the process of sales where you have to take customers out and drink a lot. So why not marry the two into one business? And that's what we decided to do. It sounded like a whole lot more fun than selling.
No, I like it. And cheers to you, Mark Johnson. Mark's the big whiskey guy, and so some of this stuff is amazing, Mark. I can't wait for you to try it. We're going to have a dinner here at the club, probably April, where we met with Chef today, and they're going to incorporate. There's a whole mirror, and I want you to be able to see it. I'm going to turn it for just a second so you guys can see it. You can see here. Look at all of that and stuff. That's good stuff. That makes for a good Friday afternoon or Friday morning if you're me. Sunday fun day. I mean, come on. There's so many different things you can do. So, but you've chosen to do, and this is Alisa too. We're going to let her speak. She hasn't spoken yet. But there's so many different products that you have. A lot of times you start with a few. You all really have done across the board some amazing products. That takes a lot too. It's you're vested in a lot of things. You're not just focusing on one. Why?
Well, our goal, much like in craft brewery, is to really bring flavor out in products, and we wanted to bring flavors out that represented North Florida, right? And up in North Florida, many people don't know, we've got perfect conditions for making whiskey. We grow lots of local corn, wheat, and rye grains. We have the best limestone spring water in the world.
Why is that important? You mentioned that earlier. Tell them a little bit about that.
Well, when you're making beer, if you've ever gone to a brewery, they will tell you how important having good quality, flavorful water is. For making whiskey, it's the same thing, and more importantly, you don't want to have any iron in your water. So limestone spring water filters out and makes sure there's no iron in the water. It's got a lot of good flavor. And those of us that live here in Florida know we have great spring water right here in Florida.
It's true.
We've got lots of limestone underneath that filters everything out. And that water helps give it the character for our Florida spirits. It's truly a Florida product because of the local grains, the local water that we use. And for making whiskey, most people don't know we have ideal conditions in North Florida for making whiskey.
Would not have known.
We tell people, welcome to whiskey country. They're like, well, I thought I was coming to the beach, not whiskey country. But up north of the beach, we have the hills, we have the heat, we have the humidity, which helps keep the alcohol from evaporating too fast. And at the same time, we get cold temperatures in the wintertime, which is important for helping to move the whiskey in and out of the wood in the barrels. That helps give it its flavor. So the products that we make are uniquely Florida. They're unique because of the ingredients that we use. They're unique because of the water that we use. And they're also unique because of where we age the products and the process of aging our products. And lastly, we don't filter our products other than the vodka because we want to keep all of that flavor in the whiskey.
So I love that. So when I went to the tasting, right? So we're at this event. It's crazy. Cam's there. It was a kind of a crazy night. It was fun. I'm not a gin person, but Cam convinced me. Are there any for sale now? We're going to get to that, Beth. Cam convinced me to try the gin, and I was like, I don't like gin. It's just too heavy. Fell in love with it, and then I tasted the apple pie rum, and I might have allegedly drank that the rest of the evening on ice. And I just knew that they were onto something. That it was such a unique blend of products and a unique option of products to purchase that I had to have them on the show, and I wanted to bring them to the club. So we have Alisa here.
Hello.
So we're finally going to let her talk. We really weren't. And somebody was going, Ted, you're sipping on the. Yeah, I'm sipping. I love you guys, but I'm not waiting for the presentation. I got to have a little bit of the drink in order to celebrate what we're doing today. So Alisa, welcome. What do you do with Timber Creek?
So I manage the marketing teams for Timber Creek. I also do a lot of the on-premise, off-premise sales, and account management. So we do just kind of getting the name out there, allowing people, exposing the brand, essentially. We have vodka, rum, Florida bourbon, as Cam kind of mentioned, and I work with these products every day. I try to create new cocktails for different accounts.
That sounds like a horrible job.
It's terrible. We were chatting earlier, and I said, this isn't work. This is fun. And when it feels like work, I just pick up a drink and
see.
Pick
you
up
guys
a
give me a hard time
drink
about that, but I see other people do it. It's not just me.
Job. It's our profession.
Oh God, sorry. See, judgment
from
behind me. I don't know what's happening there.
It's quality control, Ted. We always have to make sure that our products taste excellent at all times.
And your products do. So Chef, when we had Chef Marie and Sarita in here, you could tell that everybody loved the flavor. So let's talk a little bit about some of the products. List for them first what you have to offer, because there's a lot, and I kind of showcased it over here. Yes, he's drinking. We're all drinking. Beth, here
I'm
you go.
empty though.
Happy oh, she's empty. That's bad. You need more.
Yes.
Because she was nervous to get on the phone. Remember, it's just a phone, Alisa. I promise you, nobody's going to judge you. They're going to judge me, not you. Bring me some.
Fair enough.
All right, so give us the overview of the products, and then let's sample a few and talk about the flavor and why they're different and all of that.
Okay, so we have like I said just a little bit ago, we have vodka, rum, and Florida bourbon. We have a wheat vodka.
Yeah, please show them. So you say it's a wheat vodka. How does that make it different?
Wheat is very unique in vodkas.
Okay. Potato mostly, right?
No, actually, the majority of vodkas are made from wheat.
Oh.
50 years ago, in Eastern Europe, they didn't have a lot of wheat. They had a lot of potatoes, the potato famine, and all those things. So the guys that really started making vodka were over in Eastern Europe and Russia, right? And they didn't have wheat. Now, in the 80s, we were selling Russia wheat, but now Russia's a wheat exporter. And they all have wheat, and it's cheaper, and it's easier, and it's a very, very clean spirit. So almost all vodka is made from wheat. Nowadays, we also have a lot of corn whiskey here in the U.S. because of Tito's and everybody trying to copy Tito's, and corn is really, really inexpensive.
Oh, Tito's is corn. Interesting.
Is corn.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. What's Ciroc? Ciroc is one of those.
Ciroc is actually grape.
Grape, right?
Right.
Okay, so interesting. So there's all sorts of things you learn.
Our vodka is made from wheat because we have wonderful wheat up in North Florida.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And it's a very, very clean spirit. That's why most of the vodkas are made from
It has such a great flavor too, and we'll taste some of this soon. All right, so I didn't mean to interrupt you. So we have the wheat vodka.
So we have a wheat vodka. We have a apple pie, coffee rum, dark rum, and clear rum. All natural ingredients. There's no artificial sweeteners or flavors in any of those products. We have a wheat bourbon similar to a Maker's, which is going to be our Florida whiskey, bourbon whiskey. We have a reserve, which is a little wheat, corn, barley, and rye. And then we have our black rye whiskey. It's made from a strain of rye that only grows here in Florida called 401 Florida Black Rye. And we also have a American single malt that we just released.
So good. It's so
and
good.
And our gin that we just released, as we spoke of earlier.
I'm telling you, they're all delicious. You can't make it up. So what happens a lot when you have a distillery that comes in or you meet them at an event, they usually have one or two products, and there's not this array of products. And you all really have such a great array of products where you can come in and pretty much fulfill any need for any party, event, anything like that. Why is the bottle half empty? It's not Ted, by the way. That's funny. That's my guess. The audience is crazy in here. But you all have so much to offer, and so that was one of the wonderful things that I was trying to do with Chef, is that you can do so many things with the array of products that you have to offer, and each flavor is so unique. Talk a little bit about the, Cam, if you want, or you could, Alisa, there's no filtering, right? No filter. I think that's big.
So all of our whiskeys are unfiltered.
Right, so one of the things that we wanted to do was make spirits that reflect the area that we're making our spirits in, right? We wanted to make truly local products. Here's kind of an interesting side fact for you. Everybody loves craft beer, and they love their local craft beer. Well, what makes local craft beer local? All the barley comes from I don't know, North Dakota, right? Everybody buys it from a distributor.
That was
out
a
of
trick
Atlanta,
question.
right? So the barley's not local. The water is usually city water because most breweries are in the cities and they have to use filtered processed city water. So a lot of times they'll do reverse osmosis to clean up the water. So there's nothing particularly unique about the water in their beer. So what makes it local? The only thing that makes local beer local is the brewer, right? And good brewers make good beer, bad brewers make bad beer. If you have a good brewer in Tampa and you can take him to Orlando, you can take him to Atlanta, and he's going to make good beer.
Right.
Right. Our products truly are local because we have local grains that we use.
It's amazing.
We don't grow barley down here in Florida, but we did get our barley from North Alabama, not too far away. We have great water that we use. And in order to make what we call a true Florida whiskey, we thought there were 4 things that were very important to stick to. Number 1, we want to use 90% local Florida-grown grains.
I
which
love
we
that.
do. The rye is 100% Florida-grown rye. Our corn and wheat we grow and actually pull from a silo out in Pensacola. So it's all local farmers. Number 2, we wanted to use local limestone spring water because that gives us the local character of that water. Number 3, the products have to be aged down here in the heat and humidity of Florida to give it that unique characteristic that only Florida can give it. And then number 4, you want it unfiltered because filtering removes flavor. We want you to taste our products. We want you to taste all of our products. These products are young. We've only been distilling for 2.5 years. So our oldest products are just over 2 years old. And in order to get the most flavor out there, we don't want to filter that flavor out. We want you to taste everything.
I love it. All right, so let's taste a few. Let's talk about them. Can we start with both of us are empty, so can we start with the gin, right? Let's talk about the gin. I'll pull it up. I'm going to push it here. This is the one that I fell in love with first, and I don't drink gin. And we'll have all of this. Love it first drink. And again, the reason was juniper is just so heavy on the palate, on the nose, and so when you're drinking something that's got yes, I have lift, Beth. Thank you very much. That flavor was too strong for me. The nose was too strong. So when I tasted their gin, completely different to me. I feel like it has a light floral, but it's so smooth. And a lot of gins, people will say to you, they either love or hate gin. This is a gin that I think anybody could love. I think the reason they say that they can love or hate gin is because of that strong flavor. This is definitely more mellow, but it still has a lot of flavor, a lot of nose to it. So tell us a little bit about the gin.
And it is very light-bodied. We use honeysuckle. We use a little bit of cucumber, juniper that we actually grow right there on site on the property, as well as a little bit of lemon, and they're rose. We have a couple other ingredients that we use as well, and it's just very light-bodied. It's easy to drink.
So one of the things that's really important about the way we make our products, and our gin follows suit.
Yes.
In order to have a very flavorful, easy to drink product that has multiple flavors in it, like a gin, you have to have the flavors be very balanced. You don't want to be overpowered by the juniper or overpowered by the cucumber. So the way that we make our gin, we actually do it a little bit differently. We actually individually distill out each of the aromatics. So we'll distill juniper only, we'll distill honeysuckle only, rose. We did some cracked pepper in this one, a little fennel, some lemon, as Alisa mentioned, and
lavender.
Lavender.
You have people drooling, by the way, online. They're like, where do we get it?
But the key is
Cheers,
we individually distill each of these aromatics, and then we can blend them together to make sure that we have a proper balanced spirit so that you're not overpowering with one flavor or two flavors or something else, which makes it unbalanced. And that's what's harsh on your palate on a lot of these spirits. Is
that what it is? Because it hits you so hard, and not in a good way. It's too heavy. It's so heavy. And so when I tasted this at first, I was like, this is it. This is the one you have to talk about. Had a vision for the show immediately. I'm like, I wonder if I could convince Cam to come down to Orlando and do a TED show. So I enjoy this. So do you encourage people to make gin and tonics? Do you have a drink list that you guys are starting to work on? Like, you have so many different varietals here that I'm sure you're developing drinks, you're learning, people are utilizing it. Is gin and tonic your favorite one for the gin?
We do a homemade tonic syrup at the distillery, so that I would say is Cam's favorite. However,
I love it.
It is a new product, so we haven't been able to play with it too much, and we're excited to do so. Hopefully, we'll get a couple new
So a
recipes going.
homemade tonic?
Yeah.
That's so, tonics are tough for me because they have they're so full of sugar. And sometimes it tastes like flat water to me is what a tonic tastes like, so I never go for that. But I think it's a perfect match for gin if it's done right. So you've created your own.
Yeah, the interesting part is that the big brands have tended to use a chemical quinine to make their products because it's cheap and easy. There's a few brands that are on the market that are amazing because they actually use the bark of the chinchoa bark, which is what they originally got quinine from way back when, right? Like you get aspirin from bark and other types of things, right? So when you use the bark, it gives you a completely different flavor. So we just went online and looked up some homemade tonic recipes and picked one that looked tasty, and we started making it. And the key is when you make it yourself, you can tweak and tune it to your own flavors. For example, you can back off a little bit on the simple syrups, not make it too sweet.
Right.
The recipe we used actually included a number of the flavors that we have in our gin already. It used lavender, it did use some cardamom and allspice, and then it used a citrus with lemon, lime, and orange.
Yum.
So it was very tasty, and that bark is the difference. It's
That's your favorite right there?
Flavor, absolutely.
I love it. Barry Altland says Sierra Mist is the perfect foil for gin.
I saw that.
All right, so the gin's amazing. Again, we're gonna give all the information at the very end. What's the next thing that we want to taste and tell them about?
Let's talk about our apple pie. Our apple pie.
I'm in love with
our
the apple pie.
rum is made with all natural ingredients, like I mentioned earlier.
Ted needs a shot.
A little, yes.
I might.
You're empty again.
An IV, I think.
A little apples, cinnamon, raisin, lemon, and Madagascar vanilla. It is delicious.
So once I had the gin and Cam got me hooked, he's like, you have to try the apple pie. Or maybe that was your distiller, Aaron. And I said, come on, I don't really like apple pie. It's not my favorite thing. It's not my favorite. I'm not an apple pie. I'm sorry, it's not American. I'm terrible. And I'm like, all right, I'll try it. Well, that's what I #allegedly drank the entire night over ice at the Pro Bowl event at M Lounge, because that's how smooth it is. And it's not super sweet. You don't taste any of that fake sweetness that you sometimes get in anything that's flavored. It has a real smooth flavor to it, so I'll let you guys talk about on the professional side of what that means.
Well, Cam and Aaron, they are not big sweet. They don't have sweet tooth outside of maybe an actual homemade apple pie. So they try to balance out all of our drinks, all of our booze here with minimizing the amount of any sort of sweetness. Same on our bourbons. Our bourbons aren't very sweet. We have a wheated bourbon, which it is a little bit, but the apple pie, it's great. I mean, it's great.
It has this great, so it really does taste like apple pie. And when we were meeting with Chef and Sarita, our pastry chef, I mean, they were coming up with all sorts of ways to incorporate it in cooking and having it as the whatever cocktail we're going to make, because it's got an apple flavor to it, but it's got cinnamon. It's just something super good. It almost tastes a little bit like something that you would drink on a day where you're sitting in front of the fireplace. I mean, there's so many ways to do it. But I had it on the rocks that night, and I promise you, I'm not really a big apple pie person, and it's just seriously one of the most tasty drinks. So
putting it over ice cream is great. The lemon stands out in the drink, so even making something as simple as a mule is great. It really is
because it's rum, remember? It's a rum, so I'm not a huge rum fan. I'm picky about it. So when Cam said it was a rum, I'm like, why am I ever going to drink a rum on the rocks? And God, I would kill to have this in my little locker right now because it's that delicious.
Yeah.
What we found out is that when you're looking at marrying flavors, anything that mixes with brown sugar tastes great in rum, because rum is basically made from brown sugar, which is molasses and sugar, right?
Right.
So those flavors go very well together. So anything that tastes great with brown sugar tastes great with rum. And that's the way we made it. Again, our goal is to use all natural ingredients. we didn't want to add a bunch of sugar into something like apple pie. There's a bunch of recipes out there on the internet for apple pie, and they all use tons of sugar.
It's so sugar filled, and then it tastes funny and funky, and
it gives you the worst
headache. I was going to say it's the headache thing. Yeah, no.
So we do not add sugar to our products. We actually use apple juice concentrate, and instead of reconstituting the apple juice with water, we reconstitute it with rum. It's as simple as that. So you get
Can all of my water be reconstituted with rum?
Absolutely.
That would be awesome. This is delicious. All right, so what's up next?
So we'll talk a little. We also have a coffee rum. It is made with a dark Brazilian roast. Ted might have had a couple drinks.
I might have had that. That's not all me. It might be me.
It is a dark Brazilian roast. We roast the coffee beans locally in the Panhandle. We do a 4-day cold brew on it, and then we mix it with our clear rum, which is the base of all of our rums. It's a dark roast. There's a lot of caffeine in there. I always say Yeti Beach Sunday morning, add a little bit of almond milk and simple syrup, and you're good to go for the rest of the day. Nice hair of the dog.
We were talking about that earlier. So Mary says, you like rum and gin when Casey O'Donnell makes you a cocktail. You're right. Can't wait to try using Timber Creek. Her husband is a big tiki, kind of all that wonderful flavor. And so rum I started really liking because her husband was making these rum drinks. And there's a local place called Aku Aku that's near World of Beer downtown. And they make some of the most amazing rum drinks. They should definitely be on your radar to get with because they're very popular. It's a great location.
You know, when you hear rum, especially here in Florida, everybody thinks Caribbean, they think bananas, they think mango, they think coconut,
right?
They think umbrella drinks. Well, we're not up there. We're up in Lower Alabama, right? So we like to tell people we make
LA,
redneck
baby.
rum.
Redneck
right?
rum.
We make apple pie, we make coffee, we've got some barrel-aged rum that tastes a little bit like bourbon.
I love it. That's awesome. All right, so I tasted this, and then the first thing we were actually talking earlier, this is the coffee rum, right?
It is the coffee.
The Brazilian coffee rum. And then, so it smells so good. And what Cam said earlier was that they wanted to have a real flavor, something that really hits you with the coffee. It's a strong coffee flavor. They're not trying to be weak about the coffee. So when Alisa and I were talking, I was like, God, I love an espresso martini. I would imagine this would be so cool in an espresso martini. And she said that they have a recipe for that. But that's the flavor of this. It's definitely not for the weak of heart. But it has such an amazing flavor to it and such a great note to it.
Mm-hmm. It's coffee. It tastes like coffee. You have to really like dark coffee and that coffee flavor to enjoy this product. But it's amazing.
And we use the cold brew on the coffee, which is like what Starbucks does to make your iced coffee. The key is when you do that cold brew, you get all that coffee flavor, right, and you don't get the acid. So this is not something that
there's nothing acidic to this at all.
It's very clean, smooth, but very flavorful.
And then the nose is so good on it. It's got such a great. You could still smell the coffee, but it's not overwhelming. There's no fake flavor to it. You know, I'm not a big fan of espresso martini infused whatever. The vodkas where they do the espresso infused. Not a big fan of that. This is definitely different. This has the real smell to it and the real flavor. There's nothing fake to it. Mm-hmm. There's an espresso rum called Grind, also delicious, is what Barry Altland just said. Okay,
I'll try that. The next thing I wanted to kind of talk about is our black rye whiskey. It's made with a strain of rye that only grows here in Florida called 401 Florida Black Rye. This rye is 100%. Most ryes, if you're familiar with them, are cut about 40 to 60% with corn or barley, typically corn because it's cheap. Ours is not cut at all. Which makes it very unique. Did you try this one earlier?
No, I have not, so please pour me some. Cam, I have a question for you that's pretty ignorant, but I think a lot of people will want to know. So we all know from the song American Pie, it's whiskey and rye and blah, blah, blah. What is the difference between whiskey, rye, and bourbon? Why are we... I would love to know that, because when you said you had a black rye, I had absolutely no idea what that meant.
Right. So the federal government regulates the spirits industry, and they have a book called the Beverage Alcohol Manual. And in the Beverage Alcohol Manual, they define exactly what you can call what, and they give it names. And within their categories, they have what they call class and type. So the larger categories are classes. So there's whiskey, there's rum, there's vodka. These are very large classes. as a subtype of whiskey, you can have whiskey made from corn, also called bourbon. You can have whiskey made from rye, called rye whiskey. You can have whiskey made from malted barley, called malt whiskey or single malt whiskey, which is similar to a Scotch or an Irish whiskey. You can have whiskey made from oats. You can have, frankly, you can make whiskey from a number of different grains, but the predominant ones are those four: corn, wheat, rye, and barley.
Wow.
Right? So bourbon, what most people don't know, bourbon is really a corn whiskey. And the government sets the definitions for what bourbon is and where it can be made and what it can be called. And in order to be called bourbon, a whiskey must be made from at least 51% corn. It must come out of the still at less than 80% alcohol. It must be aged in a new charred American oak barrel.
Wow.
There is no minimum time to be called bourbon. There's a second category called straight bourbon that is the same as bourbon, but it must be aged for 2 years. It also does not specify that bourbon can only be made in Kentucky. Bourbon can be made anywhere in the United States.
You're going to have the purists on here all going crazy.
No, the purists actually know. You can make bourbon anywhere in the United States, and as part of NAFTA, we have an agreement with Canada and Mexico that Canadian whiskey can only be made in Canada, bourbon can only be made in the United States, and tequila can only be made in Mexico.
See, this is why you want an engineer to run your distillery. Right. I swear to God. These are the answers. I've always wondered. I have no earthly idea sometimes. And my friends that drink scotch, that's a whole nother world. But I never could understand the difference. And so when you were talking about your rye, I just thought it smelled so good. But until you just explained it, I had no idea what the difference was.
There's another distinction that you should understand, right? So in order to be called bourbon, it must be at least 51% corn, but you can have other grains in there as well. So a typical bourbon is going to be corn, wheat, and barley, corn, rye, and barley, or corn, wheat, rye, and barley, with all of them being a minimum of 51% corn. In order to be called a rye whiskey, it has to be a minimum of 51% rye. So you can actually have a rye whiskey that's 51% rye and 49% corn or barley or wheat or whatever. Most bourbons, or most ryes I should say, are actually a blend of multiple grains. Rye is a very expensive grain here in the U.S. And so people tend to cut it with other things and add flavors to make it a little more similar to some of their other whiskeys. There's only a handful of rye whiskeys that are actually 100% rye. So ours is one of the few, but the unique flavor of our Florida Black Rye was so incredible.
It's so good, guys.
Cut that with any other grains.
So when you say you don't want to cut it, that means you're not mixing it with anything else,
we're not adding other grains into the mix.
Oh my God, guys, I wish you could smell it. It smells delicious. It actually tastes delicious too.
And I've actually found that a lot of Scotch drinkers like our rye. Comparatively from bourbon, most people like bourbon or Scotch. The Scotch drinkers typically go towards our rye. Now we have an American single malt that we can kind of appeal to those Scotch drinkers as well.
Yes, I mean, listen, hold on, let me look at time. Oh, we're good right now. So I want you to be educated. My goal, of course, people, is I love you so much, and I want you to be educated about this because this is the only time that I've ever had anybody on to talk about spirits, just so you know. I mean, I haven't had anybody on before. But because he has such a love for the product and a knowledge, and Alisa knows her stuff too.
I'm a little nervous right now.
Oh, you should not be. Really, it's me, you, and the iPhone. Remember, look how good you look. You look great. It's great lighting. We're golden.
Well, thanks, Ted. I worked on it.
You did work on it. But this is delicious. So I didn't know what a rye was at all. That's why I wanted to ask you. And I think a lot of people are afraid to ask. So when you go into a bar or you go to a whiskey tasting, excuse me, a whiskey tasting, and you go to any kind of party, and people are like, what do you want? Do you want a whiskey? Do you want a bourbon? Do you want a rye? Like, I had no idea until you explained it, Cam, what the difference was. So that's really cool. All right, so we have so many more products, but we want to wrap it up. Let's do one more, if you'd like. And what we're going to do once we finish is when I share the video, I'm going to have Cam and Alisa put their contact information, the distillery's website, how to reach them. Tisky Wasting. That's funny, Bob. If I said that, God help me, it's Friday afternoon. And I probably did. Cheers. But I want you to experience their distillery, all of the stuff that they have to offer, because it's really awesome. And they're both good people, right? So, you know what, you meet people, and that was one of the things with Cam. He was so engaging when I first got there, and he could have been super hoity-toity because he's got a distillery and I don't. So anybody who has a distillery and I don't, or a winery or whatever you have, and he was so engaging and educating, and I thought that was really important because that's what people really want. They want to know what they're drinking and they want to know what their choices are, and you guys give that to them, so thank you.
So I think the last product we're going to touch on is our Southern Reserve Florida whiskey. And what makes this unique, this is actually a 4-grain whiskey, which is unique in the bourbon world. It's 55% corn, so it does qualify as a bourbon. It is about 30% rye, which makes it very spicy. We also have a little bit of wheat in there to cut the sweetness down with the wheat, and then a little bit of barley to round out and give it that butteriness. So because of the 4 grains, it's very spicy. It has lots of flavor, lots of complexity. But one of the things we do a little bit differently to make our whiskeys and our bourbons is we distill 1 grain at a time. So we have barrels of corn whiskey, barrels of wheat whiskey, barrels of rye whiskey, and barrels of barley whiskey. After those whiskeys age, we then blend those whiskeys together to create our flavor profiles. So technically, one of the reasons we call this a Florida whiskey because, again, it's 90% local grains. It uses local limestone spring water. It's aged right here in Florida, and it's unfiltered. And we think that is the characteristic that makes a Florida whiskey. But what makes ours even more unique is the blending. So we actually blend these together to create different flavor profiles and bring out the uniqueness of each of those grains. Now, there are some purists out there that will say, oh, well, bourbon must be made from one mash bill.
Right.
Our product's called a Florida whiskey. It's not called a bourbon. But the flavor profile is a bourbon flavor profile. If you taste it, you're going to taste bourbon, right? The federal government doesn't really have a category for what we do. They have a definition for what they call bourbon a blend or a blended bourbon, but really that definition was meant for guys who made a little bit of bourbon and they wanted to cut it with some cheap neutral spirits and make a cheap whiskey, and they could still call it bourbon with 49% neutral spirits and 51% bourbon. That's not what we do. What we do is we just distill these individually and then we blend them to create different flavors. That's why we have 4 different whiskeys that all come from the same pool of barrels, and they're all unique in their flavor profiles. The Reserve is kind of our crown jewel because it has so much flavor, so much complexity in a very young whiskey, because it does have all 4 of those grains in it. And again, because we use this blending technique, we can actually blend it to have a very balanced flavor. So it doesn't have too much corn, it doesn't have too much rye, it doesn't have too much wheat, it doesn't have too much barley. It's perfectly balanced for a wonderful flavor profile. It really rolls around your tongue in a very unique way, and it's very, very pleasing and very interesting to drink.
So we've got a couple of questions. Clay Watson wants to know what the proof is. And then Bob Lee wants to know where can we locally find it?
So the proof on the Reserve is 100 proof. It is very smooth for 100 proof. And you can find it at ABC locally here in the Orlando area. Good. ABC Liquors. We hope to expand to a couple others as well.
Yeah, we're gonna try to promote them as much as possible. I love anything that's Florida grown. I think that's awesome, and I love the fact that you guys are willing to come down and talk about it. So, all right, so we're tasting the single malt.
No, this is
we are tasting.
Oh, the Reserve. Wow, we're going Reserve. I love it.
And Ted, we like to talk about our whiskey almost as much as we like to drink our whiskey.
Bill, hi, I see you on there. Yo, we love you.
And you already had some. Would you like another?
That's what I'm drinking.
It smells so good. It's smooth, is what it is, right? Is that?
It is very smooth.
So what should I expect on the flavor on this?
Well, corn is a sweet grain, so it's going to hit your tongue a little bit sweet on the front end of your tongue. And then the rye is going to hit you with a very spicy pepperiness.
It's delicious.
The
Look who's on. Just to give her props, Kanisha Samuels is on.
Hey, Kanisha.
We love you, Kanisha. That's how I met them, because she brought you down, right?
I just
That's
called
awesome.
her earlier.
I love it. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
I was just saying. Then you get a little bit of that spicy pepperiness, and then the rye also has a little bit of a honey finish, which you get on the back of your tongue. And then the barley is very round and buttery, and you get that on the sides of your tongue. So if you swish that around in your mouth a little bit, you experience lots of different flavors across the whiskey as you're enjoying it.
it's so good. My rule in college was if it's brown, put it down. But this is adult. This is adult stuff. Like, this is so delicious. Like, you can't imagine. I wish you guys could all experience it. You can. You can go to ABC, and you can also come to some of the events that we're going to do. And they're in Orlando a lot. Alisa's here a lot, and so we want to introduce her around. Republic is who sells your
RNDC.
Okay, so I have to reach out to Adam. Any parting words for them? We had a little interruption. It's fine. Parting words for them?
Come and see us. Try our products. We hope you like them.
Seriously, I would not have somebody on that I didn't like the product. You guys know that. And I wish you guys could be here and taste it all with us because it was awesome. But we will give you their contact information, the website, who to contact to order. They should carry it at Citrus Club. We're working on it. Kani. That's actually what we're doing, right?
There will be an event here at Citrus Club, and hopefully.
See, she said apple pie is my favorite too. It was so good, right? I know. That's why I have it close because I can't see, and if I can't see, I can't respond. Thank you guys for driving down. I think it was so awesome. I appreciate you sharing all of your amazing spirits with us. We love you guys. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining me for 3 shows. Today was a crazy day, but look, we ended with some amazing spirits today. And look at these great people. So absolutely, thank you guys so much. We love you. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next week. We have some crazy things going on. And cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Come
Yay,
see us at the
cheers.
distillery.
Absolutely. Love you guys.